people as you start making your way out of the waiting room in to this seminar with Tammy Tolman. Just a few moments more as everyone joins us in this space. So I hope you've been able to have some afternoon tea. Maybe you've been able to chat with someone about your experience this morning and share about what you've learnt. For those of you I have not met before, my name is Michael Stalley and I'm an Anglican minister. I'm a minister in the Anglican Church of Southern Queensland. Behind me, that side, you can see a stained glass window which represents an intergenerational picture which sits in my church in Brisbane at St David's. So welcome to you. I have had the privilege over the last few years as I've engaged particularly with this intergenerational concept and sought to put it in place in my own community, of having met our presenter Tammy a number of times here in Australia and overseas. And I could read to you all the things that Tammy has done. You can find that on the website. I want to tell you a personal reflection though, as I have journeyed with Tammy in this area of intergenerational ministry, I've met someone of great passion and pragmatism about making this stuff happen on the ground. So for me, I'm looking forward to hearing from Tammy because of that pragmatic nature, because I often go away with stuff that I can use this weekend. So Tammy's asked me to just point out a couple of things for you. She is hoping that you're aware that you might have, I've got to put it in front of me here, A4 paper and a pen, which will be the implements that you will need to participate in Tammy's seminar this afternoon. Tammy's also prepared a Padlet. If you haven't met a Padlet before, I think we've put the link to the Padlet in the chat. I can't see that at the moment, but you can also find the Padlet at the intergenerate.com.au/resources site under Tammy Tolman's workshop material, and you can go to a link there. So even after the seminar today, there'll be that Padlet there that you can go back to and look at the resources. So I think that's all I need to say to now, but to hand over to Tammy and say thank you for what you have to share for us this afternoon, Tammy.
Thank you, and I'm excited to share in this space. Love talking about faith communities and the momentum within the small spaces, which was kind of tipped off by the COVID thing, but also just really being challenged by what does it mean to actually do life when we are confined to small spaces. But mostly, I think there's a biblical principle there that I want to unpack today. I want to have a quick look at this video. Let's hope it works. We haven't tried video yet today, but we're going to give it a try. And this may bring some of you back to your childhood, and some of you may be disgusted, but that's okay. I just want to have a little bit of different, something that you've never seen, maybe.
Hello, Michael Ekman. I'm supposed to show you around.
Oh, hi. Thank God. You know, normally they say I'm one of those audio-visual geeks.
No, I do. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Hey, Michael, where should I put the slides? Michael. So, Cameron, here's the breakdown. There, we've got your basic, beautiful people. Now listen, unless they talk to you first, don't bother.
Well, is that your rule or theirs?
Watch. Hey there.
Eat me.
You see that? To the left, we have the coffee kids.
Whoa, that was Costa Rican, butthead.
Very edgy. Don't make any movements around them. These delusionals are your white Rastas. They're big Marley fans. They think they're black. Semi-political, but mostly...
Smoke a lot of weed?
Yeah. These guys...
Wait, let me guess. Cowboys?
Yeah, but the closest they've come to a cow is McDonald's. These are your future MBAs. We're all Ivy League accepted. Yuppie greed is back, my friend. Hey, guys. How you doing? Close it, Boogie. Yesterday, I was their god.
What happened?
Hoagie Lowenstein started a rumor that I my Izod's at an outlet mall.
So they kicked you out?
I'll still take over, but don't worry. He'll pay. Now, over here...
Oh, my God. is she in?
Don't even think about it, group. Bianca Stratford, she's a sophomore.
I burn, I pine, I perish.
Of course you do. You know, she's beautiful and deep, I'm sure.
Yeah, but there's a difference between like and love. Because I like my Skechers, but I love my Prada backpack.
But I love my Skechers.
That's because you don't have a Prada backpack.
Oh.
Listen, forget her incredibly uptight father, and it's a widely known fact that the Stratfords aren't allowed to date.
Yeah.
Why are we so surprised when we talk about small groups? Because the reality is that most of us know exactly what that's like. You know, when you've been to high school, you've been to school, you've been to work, you get these kind of, we naturally cluster into smaller groups of like-minded, passionate kind of people. And so for me, I just think that it's very apparent in this world that we actually function well in small groups. But science also shows us that that small groups are actually a part of the thing. So if I can have a look at the science, the reality is that atoms, and I'm not very scientific, and this is all on your Padlet, you don't need to really look at it, don't need to look at the words, you just need to look at the pretty pictures that say that an atom is the smallest single sphere that you can have. And so when we start to join molecules, it's actually two atoms joining together. And when we go right down here to molecules of compounds, that's actually where different atoms join together to make a molecule. Now, as I said, I'm not a scientist. I'm not that particular, that very technical. However, for me, it's about the colours and the pictures and the visual representation, but also about the truth that it starts with atoms, and different atoms joined together make different compounds, and those compounds are endless. And I love that kind of visual, that even in our science, in our world, how we do. And so when we look at physics and we look at how that we kind of, what does that mean about momentum? Well, that's what I found really fascinating as I started to do writing my own book with Collide and actually looking at what are some of the things. So the physics definition says that a brief dynamic event consists if the close approach of two or more particles, such as atoms, result in an abrupt change of momentum or an exchange of energy. And so I look here and I go, even science shows us that we have small parts. We're all different. You know, that's the body of Christ here. But when we actually join together or when we collide, we actually cause momentum. And so for me, again, I just think there's something really powerful about what does it mean for small spaces to be causing momentum. Now, you might not be scientific and you might not be into movies, but I bet you're into Smarties. And so when I think about Smarties, it's the same thing. There's a box of Smarties and they are all different colours. And how you arrange them is really important. And so some people, they just like to keep everything separate, isolated, every colour unique on its own, and they are. Others, they might actually like to just make it, I don't know, are you that kind of person that grabs your Smartie box and actually arranges your colours? I don't know. Maybe even you can't even cope with them touching. Maybe you have to have them totally isolated in their little spaces. Or maybe like this, you know, they're in the box and you don't really know where they are or how many you've got, but you know they're in there. Or you just don't mind, you just throw them all together. You know, for me, I don't know if you even respond naturally to one of those, whether you go, oh yeah, that's exactly what I relate to. I'm happy there. This, I just don't know what to do with. And that in itself says to us, how do we feel about those kind of connections and collisions and crossing over each other, even though we're still talking about beautiful, small individual things, and how do we actually build momentum? You know, when I bought Smarties when I was young, you only had this option. Nowadays, you have other options. Nowadays, you can buy a whole tube of Smarties just orange or just pink, or you can go and you can just get one colour. And I just think, oh my gosh, like, you know, I get that there's some point to that in some ways, but there is such a beautiful array of colours here that I just feel like we need to think about how do we respond even just to the concept of colours mixing. I know when I work with this and I use Play-Doh, I have some people who just go, no, you can't mix the colours. You can't mix the colours. And there's others that go, oh, yeah, let's see what we can make. So, again, I want to watch. I'm hoping that this video will work because this is a classic video of a little boy and his dad and his mum experimenting with Smarties and creating momentum. Let's see this.
Okay, hi guys, I'm Cheyenne, and we just put some Smarties in, and you could already see the colors coming out, and we watched this on YouTube. So all we did is like we got a plate, put Smarties around it, and then put water in the middle.
We put just enough water so that the water touches the Smarties, right? Not too much, not too little.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
Nita,
Yeah.
you want to take a quick look?
Huh?
See how the color seeps out? They don't merge with each other. They stay separate because different colors are made of different materials, right? And when they come to the center, almost there. And the munching you hear is Cheyenne actually eating the Smarties. There we go. And it's getting slightly bendy, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
Water moves by itself sometimes.
I wonder what happens now that it's gone to the center.
We're going to keep it.
What's going to happen next? And what happens if I... One more time. See how they merge and then they separate again?
Yeah.
Hey, they don't want to mix up so easily, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, let's do it one more time and see if it can still separate.
It's separated, but there's like shadows.
Yeah, it's getting slightly mixed up, but it's still somewhat separate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's stop the video here. Bye. Oh, here's Cheyenne.
Oh, bye guys! I almost forgot to do my intro.
I just love, there's so much richness in that 2 minutes 39. Like just even watching the interaction or seeing the interaction between the boy and his father and his mother. I love the fact that the boy is eating the Smarties. I love the fact that the father is saying, well, look at this and look at this. And, you know, there's just that beauty, as well as them together discovering what it looks like and what momentum does when we actually mix the Smarties. That beautiful sense that each of them are unique and they still maintain, but there's still something about it that can't be undone, that's changed forever because of what's happened. And so I want us to start. I want to send you into chat rooms, and I want you to think about as we look into, as we unpack what it means for, you know, people to work together, small spaces, connecting with momentum, what faith communities look like. When I've just thrown a whole lot of visuals at you just to open up our thinking before we drill down. And I want to say, I wonder what words came to you when you see these images. I wonder what you most relate to. I wonder what you struggle with. I wonder whether for you, you know, you come with it with you see it a certain way. And hopefully even in your rooms with 4 or 5 people, you might be open to the fact that we all see things differently, and what does God want to teach us in that. So I'm going to ask you to join a room and have a chat and ask those questions. What so far you've thought about, whether it's atoms, whether it's small groups, whether it's Smarties, whether it's all those things. What are some of those visuals and what have they emoted in you already? I think about now the situation, COVID really instantly confined us into small spaces, didn't it? And it's interesting to think how we reacted. And I know a few of us were just talking here about how some people panic and everyone has kind of different responses. And I don't want to be insensitive to the difficulties and the pain that has been brought about because of COVID. But I also, I suppose for me, I just want to put that kind of leadership pastor hat on, or the leader hat, and go, what do you think God is challenging us, and how it was responding, how we're supposed to respond in this context? And when I think about faith communities and I think about what it is that we should be doing, it's interesting. I have found watching how church leaders and how the world church has actually responded to COVID. Barna has just done some research in the last month, he said, and this, for me, I don't know about you, I know I'm not, again, stats just are really helpful, but for me, I actually find this quite profound. You may not be able to read it, but again, you'll have it all with you, but I've given you a link in the Padlet, but it actually said that pastors, 96% of pastors reported that they based their initial response, their first response was to stream worship services online. And that was basically what they've spent the majority of, that's what they said, that was their main top priority. Interestingly, again, when Barna talked to practicing Christians, 48% said they have not gone online on their church in the last month. And 50 of them said they've gone on, but they multitask while they mainstream worship. So for me, I just think that's a really interesting comparison. But actually, some of the things that I find the most saddest is that 3 out of 10 churchgoers have not had any contact with a church leader in the past month. Less than 12% have met in any kind of small group. 15% have met in any kind of prayer. 74% of American Christians have done nothing during this time to help other people. And over 80% of people, Christians, have felt isolated and alone. Now, I don't know about you, when I put all those stats together, I just think that it's a really, I'll be honest, I think it's a really sad response as Christians, that we haven't quite got the fact that actually this pandemic, which confined us to small spaces, should actually have not made a difference to the call and to the way in which we love each other, feel connected, and do life together. And a pastor there said some pastors do a great job at fixing the wrong problem. So again, it's this a sobering reality. You know, just the week before, in fact, days before COVID closed down Australia, I was at a conference with almost 1,000 people. Jake Mulder was speaking, and he said at that point, the church is calibrated for a world that doesn't exist. And at that point, I thought it was a profound statement. And then COVID hit, and I thought, oh my gosh, that is prophetic. The church is calibrated for a world that doesn't exist. And for me, so this is where I just kind of want to drill down into the momentum of small confined spaces, that faith communities are actually designed to thrive in these spaces. And yet our stats show that our systems and the way we've done it, actually, I'm not sure if that's necessarily the case. And so let's have a look, although Smarties, can tell us some things. A smart man makes a mistake, learns from it, and never makes that mistake again. A wise man finds a smart man and learns from him how to avoid making the mistake again. I think this is a key time as leaders, as people within the context of ministry, to think, okay, how can I learn from this to not actually go back to what maybe it is that we're doing that may not actually be quite the momentum that Jesus or God designed. But so let's go to the smart man and the wisdom of the word. And this is where I would love it if you had your paper. Oh, I'm trying to work out how to get to the light. See, paper, pen, here. Paper, pen. Because I know, some of you might not, this might be kind of comfortable, others of you might like, yeah, I can do something. I just feel like, again, I just really feel like there's some pictures here that might come out. So I want to encourage you to respond by just drawing what it is. So when we look at Adam and Eve, let's start from the very beginning. Very good place to start. Genesis. God blessed them and said, be fruitful, increase in number, and fill the earth and subdue it. And so we all know that's a very important part of the beginning, that God's design was that two would come together and that they would be fruitful and multiply. And I don't know, I wonder, don't put the picture up yet, John, I wonder what kind of compound molecule structure do you see when you see God's command to be fruitful and to multiply? Just draw. There's no right or wrong here. There's no gradings. I'm just interested in what we've talked about, kind of shapes and molecules and compounds and structures. This is the command, be fruitful, multiply. I wonder what that could look like, that we would fill the earth with God's mission and God's love just by actually coming together and being fruitful and multiplying. Now, of course, there's a very practical sense in that, which we don't need to go into details for, but there's a very visual representation. I wonder if some of you have got a picture that just kind of came to you, whether you want to just throw it up on the screen. I can see about, woohoo, I like that. I can see about like 30 of you. So I kind of, nice, interesting. Okay, got a few pictures. Some of you might not get pictures, and that's fine. It might take a little while. Some of you got some pictures. Yes, interesting. So this is the picture that I thought of when I read this. Now this actually, yes, this looks like a virus. How quickly did we learn how a virus spreads throughout the world? And when I think about what he's called us to do, I just think that that is actually the momentum he's requiring from small spaces, is that if one or two get together and then they share, and then those two get together and they share, and those two get together and they share, and then we actually find ourselves, as we've just experienced, how quickly a virus spreads. Well, that's kind of one of the patterns that I've seen right through Scripture, and certainly when I see that. Let's have a look at the next one. So we look at Moses and Jethro. We can't do all the stories, and there's so many of them. But this one, again, just came to me, realized, okay, Moses is out in the wilderness. He's got thousands and thousands of people. He's trying to, navigate this huge, huge crowd and be the answer to everything. And his father-in-law comes to him and says, what you're doing is not a good thing. And so then he sits him down and he says, what you need to do is actually find capable, trustworthy men, and you need to break this great big organism down into thousands, hundreds, 50s, tens. And that way, it's not only going to make your load lighter, but it's going to be much more functional. Smaller groups actually doing life together with accountability and that going. Now, what pictures come to you now? Like, we'll throw up the visuals of the atoms and just see. But I don't know. What comes to you? What do you see when you hear him say, "Okay, then we're going to officially have thousands, hundreds, 50s, tens"? There's almost like this. Well, I shouldn't say it, but I see this kind of cyclic kind of, thing. I wonder what you see. I'm going to give you a minute to kind of draw it, and you can show it. Oh, I like that. Yep, listen, I can see some visuals. I can see, some connectedness there, some little compound molecules going on. Interesting. Definitely see some of those patterns in what Jethro was telling Moses. Let's have a look at Jesus and the model that he talked about. So we look in Mark 6, and it says, he summoned the 12 and began to send them out in pairs. In Luke 10, it says, now the Lord appointed 70, and then he led them in pairs to go out to every city and to share the gospel message. And so for me, again, you know Jesus enough to know that he could have pulled a crowd easily. In fact, he did pull crowds a lot. And I don't know about you, but when I read how Jesus responded, he certainly loved people and he certainly took those chances, but mostly he walked from the crowds after a time. He didn't draw everyone unto him. He actually spent time going, I need to make sure that we're in these smaller, confined spaces of 12 and 70 and 3, and actually just go, that's how this message is going to reach the world. In smaller, I wonder what kind of visuals you get. For me, I was playing with numbers a bit and I was thinking that 12, he had 6 pairs of 2, and he had 70, 30 pairs of 2. And then I love the Matthew passage where it says, where 2 or 3 are gathered, there I am with him. It's kind of like where 2 are together, then there's 3. When 3 are together, there's 4, because God's in the midst. And these numbers, this passage, Matthew 18:20, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst. And I just think about COVID, and I think about where it placed us. And it placed us where 2 or 3 in a household were able to gather. And for some reason, for some people, that just felt like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? We just can't do this. When actually there's a part of me that just went, oh my goodness, how rich is this when we understand how important it is for small spaces with momentum, that actually faith communities are designed to flourish this way. And it challenged me a lot. I'm not a numbers person. I am a very visual person, if you haven't already picked that up. But for me, I just kind of wanted to say, would it be such a problem if God's design was 2 by 2? I mean, could it be that we've actually complicated things a little bit? Now, I don't want to go to the verse. I just want to go straight to the next one and say, so we've looked at schools. Life shows us that we naturally gravitate to smaller groups for relationship, that science tells us that we're a couple of atoms make up a compound molecule, and that's actually the way in which every complex thing is made if you break it right down. And actually anything that's complex doesn't stay stable and strong unless it's actually broken down to some really strong pieces and those individual pieces. Smarties tell us that life is meant to be colourful, and we just can't. And to me, I just think about it, I couldn't help but add in there, you know, when we too much of a good thing can be unhealthy, but of course, a few Smarties is a good thing. So sometimes having thousands is not always the best thing. The model that the Bible shows us is that small groupings is the way we're created, and it's a model that spreads like a virus. And COVID-19 sends us immediately to those small places. And for me, I just kind of want to say, well, what is wrong with small spaces? What is wrong with feeling like, you know, now I can hear some people say, well, what's wrong with big? Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with big, but I actually think it's actually about momentum, about energy, and it's about how the big is made up. And this, I will claim this as my statement. I'm very proud of it. It sounds half intelligent. It's not about the size. It's all about direction and momentum. But if you want momentum, then it's all about the size. And for me, that's what I wanted to just challenge us and go, you know, as we think about this, and I would love to, oh boy, I'd love to open this up and chat about it. But for us, so as a lead pastor of an intergenerational faith community, I just found the last 2 months were actually, I know this sounds crazy maybe for some of you, but we actually are the most connected. We've had more growth. We've had more caring, more people stepping up and serving in spaces. We have found ways to be overly connected in this space of COVID, where others are feeling, 80% of the church are feeling isolated. I've just been so sad thinking, okay, I just don't know if that needs to happen, because if our response and our call and our mission is to grow together and do life together and to share the gospel, then I don't know of a more open time where I've met my neighbours, I've looked after my neighbours' children when they've struggled, we've sent notes around and said, please ring us if you've got a problem, can we buy you something? We've dropped off boxes of food at people's houses, we've made drops of kindness where we've spread it all over our community. And that's just because most of us are sitting in our home cutting and pasting and making things and then joining them together in COVID safe ways and sending them on. And for us as a community, it's one of the things that we just said, right, let's immobilise, let's do this. Let's get on Messenger, let's chat, let's make this group, let's communicate. What can you do? What can you do? What can you do? Let's join it together. For me, we think small because we actually are about individuals doing their life, and then we see how when they join together, we can make a big impact. And so for me, I do wonder if energy and momentum is actually about size. Science tells me it is, and so many other parts of life tell me it is. And I don't know about you, but I wonder if that's the same for you. I'm going to send you to chat rooms for a little while, because I wondered again, what's been your experience? What do you do with that? How do you respond to that? When you look at your pictures, and then if I asked you to draw a picture of your faith community, what would it look like? And what could it look like as we're coming out of COVID to simplify some of these things so that we might get maximum momentum? That's what I believe Jesus modelled when he walked very closely with a group of 12. That's what I see in so many patterns of the Bible. And so I just want to be challenged by that personally in a faith community, and I want to challenge us, because that's actually where intergenerational faith communities thrive. I'm convinced that if the church really gets this, it actually is the place where the gospel message and transformational life can actually really do some amazing work. So I want to give you about 6 or 7 minutes in chat rooms to talk about, what do you see? What do you think about your picture? What does that look like for your community? And what will it look like to make small faith momentum movements together with who it is that you're called to do life with? I'll see you in about 6 minutes. I hope it was helpful to unpack a little bit, because it's, again, and I'm hoping that even more questions came up for you. John? That I'm in triplicate or 4 or whatever. I hope even more questions came up to you, because again, we don't change, momentum doesn't change unless we actually collide together and actually kind of rub off on each other, and questions come up, and that's okay. And I would really encourage you that that's actually what we need to be processing through, especially when we're looking at something like intergenerational ministry, which is in some ways people that are still asking the questions as to what and how. And, you know, I can see some of you that I'm very familiar with that are constantly asking me questions. And I think it's great. I think it's the important process. If you want to kind of keep on wrestling with it, there's so much out there at the moment, which is great. But I've actually highlighted these because I think they actually come from a different perspective, not just from the typical children's, youth and stuff. So Kat Caesar's book is, again, really looking at faith communities and holistic life together, and this is some really great stuff there, which is really easily transferable into, once you get the principles, into life. And so is Simple Church from Thom Rainer, and my book Collide. So just ways in which you can kind of think more holistically. That's, to me, it's a way that we think. And I haven't really talked about what that looks like today, because we only have an hour. But I felt like when I looked at the research and I looked at the response from churches of COVID, I thought, actually, we were so caught, our response was to go, what should we do? That we didn't actually step back and go, well, why should we do that? And why are we doing what we're doing? And so for me, I just kind of, unless we wrestle with those things, to me, the what will become so much clearer when you understand why you do what you do. So when we, as a community, again, when COVID hit, it was like, we know what we're about. We know that we're about connecting. We know that everyone in our community needs to make sure they don't feel isolated, alone. We know that the children and the families we minister to, we need to make sure they don't feel isolated and alone. So therefore, what are we going to do? But it came out of the fact that we knew what was really important. Everyone needed connection, and everyone needed the chance to be able to be cared for, and then that actually just created an incredible momentum that I didn't have to do anything about. People were just kind of showing up and doing different things, and that was really exciting. I don't know about you, but one of the things I struggled with when COVID hit was I was really scared about Easter, because Easter is one of my favourite times, and we do this kind of Passover where we go into each other's houses and we actually reenact the Passover, and it's such a highlight of our community that we were aching and going, no, we can't do it. And so one of my friends put on Facebook, Michael, he put this post which just ministered to me so powerfully, and you know you can't read it there, but I'm going to read it to you. He said, for those concerned about how to celebrate Easter without pomp and circumstance, let's celebrate Easter just like it was done in the first time. Early in the morning, when some of Jesus' closest friends went to the tomb, they were met with a messenger from God and said, Jesus isn't physically located in this place that they thought he would be, and that they should go home. So they go home. A couple of guys who had a hard time believing directive went for a run, but they kept social distance, with one running farther than the other. When they returned, they all locked doors for protection against the unknown on the other side of the door. And while they prayed through their fears, Jesus appeared. Then they realized that Jesus was not bound by time and place. And they were encouraged to wait a few weeks out, to wait inside behind closed doors. And when the time was over, they went out with joy to talk about all they had seen and heard, with a greater understanding of the greatness of God and the power of the Spirit. No brass band performances, no choir, no rousing sermon, just the quiet gathering of a few people who waited for their beloved friend to appear. And then he just says, we've got this. And that just went straight to my heart. I went, you're right, we've got this. Just in small confined spaces, we are not limited to celebrate who he is and what he's done. And there are ways, and they didn't have the internet. They didn't have Zoom. How did they survive? We've had Zoom and we have those things, but they can't be the place where we stay, because we are called to build momentum through faith communities. And whether we're confined or whether we just see the power of the small, it starts there. It starts in our households. It starts in a small group of people who love each other. It starts with those spaces. And from there, the gospel message goes. And there is no stipulation of age or race or creed or colour or any of those things. Jesus just flattens all of that and says, we are a community of faith. We are equal, we are value, and we all have something to offer. And that excites me. I hope I've just challenged you to think about things a little differently. And then, you might want to go, but what about that? And what about that? Well, you can't do that in the 1 hour, especially online. And so one of the things that I am really been doing and I'm offering, if anyone's interested, is, and there are lots of other places where this happens, cohorts, whether there's through Grow Ministries or through Gen On Ministry, but we as Intergenerate want to create communities of practice and have small cohorts of people between 3 to 12 and actually meet 5 times a year and just have that chance to support, share, pray, learn together, probe, challenge, encourage each other. And if you would like to be a part of something like that, then you can go on to the Padlet, which will have the link. And we would love to say, let's meet 5 times a year on Zoom and let's just share our heartaches, our pains, our struggles, because in those small spaces, we can actually build momentum and God can use those powerful places. I have 3 minutes left. I'm not sure if there's any questions Michael, but I just, hope that there's been something that's been valuable and helpful for you.
So thank you, Tammy. Look, I haven't, there's no specific questions that I've got in the chat unless people want to pop something in there right now for us to offer to you. I, once again, will point people towards Tammy's Padlet, which you can go back to, and many of the resources and things that she's spoken about today are there that you can pick up on, as well as the intergenerate.com.au/resources site, where the link to the Padlet is as well.
Can I say, Michael, that again, one of the things that for me, this online experience obviously was rather than doing nothing, let's do something. And it's been great. But for me, again, I just keep going. Yes, we're excited that 350 or 70 people have signed on and are going to see this. Yes, that's exciting, but actually it's not exciting if all we want to do is just join for 2 days, get a whole lot of information, and then go, oh yeah, that was good, and walk away. To me, what excites me about the potential is that there are 370 little atoms that are connected to a whole lot of other people. They're connected to a whole lot of other people that might actually start to spread a different way to think. And to me, that is what we're about. And if there's any way that we can, I mean, when we know that there's like hundreds of Australians and there's 100 of New Zealanders and there's a handful of some other countries, we don't miss this opportunity for ways that we can keep connecting, because together we are going to make the change, not just a once-off, 2-day seminar. So I would just really encourage you, join the conversation. Be a part of it. Let's build communities of practice. Let's keep on supporting each other and holding each other up and challenging each other, because this is actually what I believe God's calling us to do.
Thank you, Tammy. Thank you very much for the challenge for us to look for the things that are really important in our ministries, and in our places, our communities, and in our churches, not just to do the thing that the pressure is on us to do, but to take the space, really, to allow God to speak into our community and our lives and the directions we take. Thank you for that really practical message for us this afternoon.